Hello, everyone. My name is Gitika Gorthy, and today I'm here with a very, very special guest, Miss Vicky Woodburn, who is a senior at Northwestern University studying journalism, leadership, and integrated marketing communications. She is currently working on her fourth NASA internship with Goddard Space Flight Center's Office of Communications. Ms. Woodburn is passionate about increasing accessibility to the aerospace sector in engaging and creative ways. Welcome, Ms. Woodburn. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule to talk to us today.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. It's weird being on this side of the interview process.
Yeah, and you're probably used to talking with other space champions. And when I read about yourself, I was very intrigued that you did 4 NASA internships. I think that's crazy. So you must have so much diverse knowledge. So I'm really excited to, hear about some of your work.
Yeah, I'm excited to do this.
Yeah, so before we kind of get into understanding your journey, kind of leading to that led you to be part of the Brooke Owens Fellows and later interning many times at NASA, I'd like to know more about your typical day. I mean, I know you are a college student, so it's really hard to balance a bunch of internships and school. How does your daily day run? I know it's probably a little bit different because of the virtual setting, but
Okay, right now, it's pretty much just sitting on a computer all day. Um, for the most part, my first 3 years were pretty normal. Going to class, I do a part-time job, so I have that. Um, and I guess just
oh,
trying to
wow,
manage
that's so
homework.
much.
But my first NASA internship was during the summer, so that didn't really get in the way of my studies. It was last summer. Then I did one this summer, and this fall I actually did a journalism residency, which is an internship component. That's part of my degree. So I was able to do my NASA internship as a part of that program. So I was just working full time.
Uh-huh.
Next quarter, I will be a full time student and employee. So we shall see how that goes.
That sounds very busy. I feel like you keep a lot on your plate, which is good, but
It's fun.
yeah, definitely because you love the space industry. So doing something you love is definitely not heavy work at all. So my next question is, did you always imagine yourself in the position you are today? I know like practically everyone says no to this answer. There's obviously twists and turns to your journey, but did you have any large turns that kind of led you to a completely different career path or direction?
Yeah. So the typical answer, no, I did not think I would be here. Um, I've always loved space though. I've always just thought it was so cool. I always wanted to go to space. But I was kind of pushed out of the science realm and the math realm. And so I didn't really think it was for me. So I was really into journalism and I was really into writing. So I came into school wanting to be a journalist, wanting to be like an investigative reporter, but I kind of realized that that wasn't for me. So then I had a little, I don't know, quarter life crisis. I was like, what am I going to do? And as kind of a joke, but kind of like a long shot wanting it, I applied to a NASA internship with the Goddard Office of Communications. And I got pretty far in the process, and then I got rejected. So that was really fun. But then NASA Glenn, which is located in Cleveland, Ohio, um, offered me a position actually, which was great because I'm from Akron, which is about a half hour south. So I was able to commute from home. And there my job was to basically make a magazine for their space communications and navigation internship program. Um, and from there I just fell in love with it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I have to work here. Like I have to work in the aerospace sector. And that's how I was introduced to the Brooke Owens Fellowship and all these other opportunities. And I realized how much I enjoyed science journalism and science communication and just getting to learn about new and exciting topics every day and hopefully spread my enthusiasm with other people. And it doesn't even feel like a job sometimes, just getting to learn about cool science.
Yeah, I think seeing your love for it makes me really excited because I love space the way you do as well. And I think you bring up a really good point. So, part of my series, the main purpose is to inform people that you don't have to be like a science or like math genius or like a physicist, like expert. You don't have to be a science or math prodigy in order to be a part of space. And I feel like your example shows a perfect if you have passion, even in journalism, you need marketing, you need so many things in space. It's not just math and science. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up, for people to realize. So yeah.
Yeah.
And you were talking about your different NASA internships. Was there any project that was really exciting that you'd like to share about one of your internships? I'm really curious to see some of the stuff that you might have
Oh my
done.
goodness. So yeah, I've done so much stuff that I'm proud of. So my first internship was with Glenn last summer. And my main thing was making this magazine. It was like 32 pages. I designed it from scratch.
Oh,
It had
wow.
like QR codes that you could scan to learn more about like the interns and their projects they were working on. Still one of the coolest things I've ever made.
Yeah, it
And then
sounds
we got to,
cool.
yeah, and we got it like printed and everyone got a copy. Kind of felt like a yearbook. Oops,
Okay,
sorry
yeah.
about that. And so this past summer, I was then working with the Goddard Office of Communications through the Brooke Owens Fellowship.
Mhm.
And that turned into a fall internship with them, which is turning into a
Oh,
spring internship with them. So all my other three have been with the same team. But there, I've been able to work on three really cool teams within the Office of Communications. So I've helped a lot with NASA has the Curious Universe podcast, which is for like people who don't have like a really in-depth knowledge of the space industry, but are really like fascinated by it. They get to listen to stories from like actual NASA experts. Um, so I got to help write an episode for that. I got
wow.
to help make social media products for that. I've made like Instagram stories that have gone on the NASA Instagram, which is always exciting to see.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, and I so my favorite obviously of that is the episode that I helped write, which is Seasons in the Sun, and there's season 2. You should check it out.
Yes,
But you
I
should
have
check
actually
out
never heard about this before. So could you tell people where to
really good.
find it? Because I'm interested. I would want to see it.
Yeah, if you go to nasa.gov/curious universe, it can take you to all the links and all the different sites you can listen on. I mean, it's free to listen to. Um, and then I've also gotten to help with the Roman social media for the Roman Space Telescope. Um, which is a really cool telescope. Obviously, not as well known as Hubble and Webb yet, but it's coming. It'll have its time to shine. And I've gotten to do some cool things for them. My favorite was probably a "What's your exoplanet name" challenge that I designed, and you fill it out based on like how they actually name exoplanets, and then you get your exoplanet name. So that was really cool because all of NASA participated. Like at NASA posted it, NASA Hubble, NASA Webb, NASA Exoplanet, like all the accounts. So that was
That's very exciting.
a really cool day. Yeah. And it was
Yeah.
just a really fun way to get people like involved because I had no idea how exoplanets got their names. Um, because it's a very technical process, but when you think about it, it actually makes a lot of sense. It's not just random letters and numbers. Um, and then the
I'm
last thing I
actually not
do,
aware myself. How are exoplanet names
yeah,
developed?
so they have a series of letters and numbers is how their names are like kind of put together. And the first few letters identify like the catalog that the star that they orbit is in. Um, so like the Henry Draper catalog is a big one. So you'll see like HD. And then you'll have a number that will be like up to like 6 digits. And that's the star that is within that catalog. And then it'll be a lowercase letter starting with B, because the star itself is A. And then that's what order either the exoplanet was found around that star or the order it is like from that star.
Oh wow.
Um,
When I like read a bunch of names, I don't realize there's so much behind it, so much like logic. I'm just like, oh, they're just random letters and numbers together. So, wow, okay,
mhm,
I didn't know that. That's very
right.
cool.
And it kind of like is like, oh, I can actually learn something about it from the name.
Yeah.
Um, so that's really cool. And then the last thing I help do is with our live shot program, which whenever there's a big launch or a big campaign, or like the Osiris Rex tag event, we do a lot of media interviews with NASA talent. And I am basically like a mini producer for them, a remote mini producer, but setting up interviews with, for example, we'll have an astronaut and they'll be talking to a bunch of different radio stations, or a bunch of different TV stations. And so I help with those campaigns too.
Wow, as an intern, there are so many opportunities to, get involved in a deep way at NASA, which is so cool to hear. I actually
Mhm.
applied for a few internships because I'm a high school student. I'm not sure if I would get it, but I'm excited to see if there was any opportunity and how I could get involved. I think that's very cool.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. There's definitely space for you.
Thank you. And also, you're talking about how you knew from a young age you loved space. But you just didn't know if you could get into it. How did you identify your love for space, or where was the point where you were like, oh, this is what I want to do for your career? I mean, I know after the internship you realized you wanted to
Mhm.
be in the aerospace sector, but how did you identify your passion and love for space that deeply? And like how?
I think there's just something innate in humans that they always want to discover and they always want to explore. And obviously, there's so much of space to explore that
Yeah.
I just always loved learning about it. And one of the reasons I'm really attracted to journalism in the first place is that you're not just studying, one very niche topic forever. You are learning a little bit about this, a little bit about that. And so you're always getting to like learn about new things. And I really liked that. So I think that's a really cool thing about space is there's
So
always
many.
so much being discovered. Yeah, there's always so much to learn, so many scientific missions going on. And it's changing and growing like so rapidly, especially with commercial crew now. Um, so I guess just that sense of discovery, I always just wanted to like learn more about space. And if it wasn't through a career, then it was just going to be through reading books and watching documentaries. But I'm very lucky to have found a place where I can do it and get paid for it.
Yeah, I know. I think you're right about, it's a kind of an innate curiosity. I feel like everyone always wonders how we came upon or how, where do we live? What is it like? And like just discovering about space, honestly, it's just fascinating for mostly everyone that every kid I've met. And I think being able to pursue that as like a job and being able to discover something that you loved ever since you were a little kid is something that every single person hopes for. They just don't realize they can do it. So, hopefully through, I'm trying to show through these series, you don't have to be a certain someone or, you don't have to be some sort of prodigy or like a certain race or a certain gender in order to be a part of the space industry. Anyone can achieve it if they love it as much as to get paid and do it every single day of their life. So that's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah,
Was there a
you're
personal like experience in the space field that you really was like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I love this moment. I know you were talking about your first internship at the Glenn Center. Was there any
Mhm.
other moment like that where you're like, oh, this is 100% what I want to do. I would never want to change this or give up this career ever?
um,
Or maybe a
I
certain
would
individual you might have met or anything?
Yeah, I've definitely been able to meet some really incredible individuals. I would say that once I got accepted into the Brooke Owens Fellowship, I was kind of set and in awe by all of the people involved. I've also been able to get some really cool mentors through that. So I have a Brookie mentor who was, I think she was in 2017 a Brookie, and her name is Caitlin, and she's incredible. And she's just been like really supportive this whole time, and she kind of works on the communications public engagement side of aerospace as well, so it's been really great to connect with someone in that way. And then I also have my personal mentor Emily Calandrelli, better known as at the Space Gal, um, who is just amazing and probably my all-time role model for science communication. But she's also been just really supportive along the way of reminding me that, just because you don't have a STEM background doesn't mean there isn't a place for you within the space sector, and reminding me of how I can use my own skills and talents to engage with the public, whether it be over social media or through like a NASA endeavor, um, to really just connect with them. And so I've been able to do little things like similar to what you're doing, honestly, little highlights of cool people in the industry or facts about, the Mars Perseverance rover. Um, and so it's been really great to have people like that who have kind of like supported me and pushed me up, and reminded me that I do have a place in the industry, and reminded me that I can do it and I'm not like just faking my way through it. Like there's a place for me here.
Yeah, that is so sweet. I actually was so curious about your fellowship. Could you like describe more about like what do you do in your fellowship and how it maybe has helped you to, guide you in your journey? I've personally was very curious when I heard about it, and I was like, oh, I better join a fellowship when I grow older. So could you like maybe describe to everyone else who might not know what it is like?
Yeah. So, as I've kind of mentioned, I'm a part of the Brooke Owens Fellowship. I was a member of the class of 2020. Um, and
Okay.
so yeah, so I just did it this year.
Okay.
And the way the fellowship works is there's about 40 undergraduate gender minorities that they take every year who are passionate about the aerospace industry. And they match you with an internship at a top aerospace company. I happen to be matched with NASA, but we put people at SpaceX, Lockheed, Boeing, all over the place. And you also are matched with a professional mentor, which can include like mine was Emily Calandrelli, but some people are matched with astronauts and scientists, and it's the coolest group of people ever.
That is so
um,
cool.
it's
I feel like
amazing.
contacts are really important in any
Mhm.
career, and I feel like fellowships in general, now that I'm hearing about it, it's so cool to, like, be assigned a mentor, get to know someone, be a part of your journey, and kinda guide you is so important, especially, like, in this changing times when especially if you're new and you don't have family members already in the space industry, it's really nice to have that little person who guides you and pushes you. So it's really
Yeah,
sweet.
absolutely. No, mentorship is super important. And if you're able to find someone that you can connect with like that, like it's truly invaluable. Um, and then, so they also give you like a brookie mentor, like an alumni, um, who's just a few years older. So you have someone else who's still kind of new in the industry and figuring things out. And then everyone goes off and does their internships during the summer. And in the middle of the summer, you meet for a summit. Unfortunately, ours was online this year,
Mhm.
so I didn't get to meet like most of my class in person, but it was still a really great experience. You have different speakers, you get to know the other members of your class a lot better. You do different kinds of challenges. Normally, there's like some fun activities involved, like where you can just go out and explore DC, but we didn't get that aspect
Oh,
of it,
that's
but
so
it's still a
sad.
really cool bonding experience. So then you also have all of these fellows that you're also connected with and you're also friends with and people to just kind of like vent to or look to for support or seek opportunities and network with. So just a really great community of people. And then it's very much like an inclusive community after you finish the fellowship too. Like once you're a brookie, you're always a brookie. So you always have this network to lean on, and we're helping each other out with opportunities, and we're helping each other out with just like general support and being like a cheerleader for one another.
Mhm.
So it's just really great to have those people and those connections there. But I highly recommend it for anyone interested in pursuing the space industry. It's a very long application process, but it's very much worth it because the people and experiences are incredible.
Yeah, and having those like-minded people who are just like you and have that same passion, and same circumstance, and to be able to connect with them is just it sounds like an amazing opportunity. So definitely
Mhm.
I will check it out. I'm sure everyone else will as well.
Yes.
Um, Another thing that I'm curious about is when you come into space industry or any industry in general, there's always obstacles and you're kind of like held back a little bit. For example, one person was telling me they failed an important physics exam and they were like, I'm not sure if this is for me. And they had that little bit of a self-doubt. And I'm sure everyone has certain obstacles or certain like changing points. Were there any obstacles for you when you're trying to pursue your passion?
I wouldn't say there was one specific obstacle, but I will say being a non-traditional STEM major in such a very engineering, science, math heavy field can be a challenge. There's a lot of imposter syndrome that goes along with that. Um, the majority, for example, of the Brooke Owens Fellows are coming from a very technical background, and I just don't have that background at times. So there is sometimes a bit of a
Oh, maybe I'm
inferiority
not good
complex.
enough. Mhm.
Yeah, feeling like you just don't really fit in or you're faking it. So I think the biggest challenge is trying to remind myself, I do have a place here. There are things I can do. I have some engineering friends who, panic over having to write an essay, but I can do that without a problem. But if you handed me, one of their problem sets, I would look at that and I'd be like, oh goodness, I cannot do that.
Yeah, I mean,
This
everyone
is
has
not
their
for
own
me.
strengths. So,
Exactly. And it's about kind of reminding yourself what your strengths are. And so that's when it's nice to have people there supporting you and people reminding you that you have a place.
yeah, and I feel like every single job is so important. Like, for example, when in seventh grade, I went to a summer program at NASA, and there was an education department. And I didn't know, first of all, there was an education sector at NASA. I was very
Mhm.
narrow-minded. I was like, oh, probably only scientists or super geniuses. But when I met that there was an education department and teachers, they were the ones who actually inspired me to get into the space industry. Like the knowledge they provide and the support, guidance, and mentorship opportunities, I feel like was so important. And I think it's important for every single person to remember journalism, writing is so important in NASA and like any space or any industry in general. And every single aspect is important. And you should take that into consideration. I feel like when I was a little kid, I was like, oh, I have to either be a rocket science or I have to like get into aeronautical engineering or I can't work at NASA. But now that I'm starting to see there's such a broad area of different subjects and interests, I'm kind of like, maybe I can combine my two, three other interests and make a career out of it. I don't have to like pick and choose one thing. So I think yeah, that's a very good
Yeah,
point.
no,
Just to
you're
believe in
very much
yourself.
right. There's a lot of flexibility, I feel like, within the industry, especially as it like changes. Like, it won't be too long before we're sending. I mean, they want to send Tom Cruise into space to film a movie, so
That would be interesting.
it would be quite a feat.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, they can be sending teachers into space and journalists into space, and I can't wait until we start sending like artists into space and just
Oh
seeing the
yeah.
work that comes out of that.
Mhm.
um, it's really important to remind ourselves that there's like so many other parts, I guess, to the human experience as we start sending like humans up into space and to explore more.
Yeah, definitely. And you kind of bring up a good point that kind of leads me to my next question is I'm really interested in learning more about like what you're excited and nervous about in the industry. But first I'd like to know, how do you kind of keep yourself updated? Like you're a writer and being able to take all the information and provide it to the public in simple terms and also in an engaging way means you need to know a lot more information than is what is required to actually make it. So how do you like keep yourself into the industry, considering you don't have a science background, you're more of a writer. How do you kind of stay updated with all the information and the new technology that's being invented?
Yeah, a lot of reading, a lot of newsletters I subscribe to kind of keep me up to date on like policy changes and launches. There's this one website I love called Supercluster, and they have like a launch tracker at the top that
Oh,
just counts down to the next launch like throughout the globe, which is really cool because you realize how often humans are sending things into space.
that's
Um,
so cool.
but I think not having that science background can be an advantage at times, especially when looking at the science communication role, because it helps me better understand how to communicate ideas in ways that non-technical people, as the majority of the public is, um, will like comprehend these subjects.
Mhm.
So I always tell whoever I'm talking to, whoever the expert is, if I can't understand it, the public's not going to understand
Yeah.
it. And so I like to, if someone's explaining a topic to me for like an interview or something, I will have them do it once as they were talking to, a peer or a colleague, highly technical, all the jargon in there. And then I'll have them do it again, where I like to joke that I'll be like an annoying little toddler and just being like, why? But
What's
what's
this?
that? But wait, what's that? Explain that. Tell me more. And I think that's just a really good way to kind of like bring out all of the information that you need to fully understand a topic. And it's a lot of work, but it's very rewarding work.
Yeah, and you're interested in it as well. So it's a plus point to be updated,
Oh,
have it as a job, and do everything. So yeah, I'm sure
yeah.
you love it. Yeah. So off of your reading, kind of, I'm sure you have like an idea of some things that you're really looking forward to, and then some things that you're kind of like, a little reserved about. Like, I'm not sure if this is the right thing we're doing. What excites you and kind of what makes you nervous about the space industry?
Yeah, I'm really excited that it's kind of like becoming more known that there is a lot more opportunity within the space industry. I'm excited that there are people doing like exactly what you're doing, showcasing that there are, these non-technical opportunities. You don't just have to be an aerospace engineer. We need aerospace engineers. That's great that there's aerospace engineers, but it's not the
Yes.
only path. Um, I think that's what really excites me. I think there's a lot more public interest in it currently, especially thanks to companies like SpaceX that are doing these like high profile launches and bringing them back to the United States. I'm really excited about commercial crew. You know, the cheaper that we can make accessing space, the better. The more players that are able to access space. And I'm also really excited that there are a lot more nations starting to participate.
Yeah,
Um,
I know. Hmm.
you have like a lot of these like space emerging nations, and I think that's great because I think it truly is such like a global endeavor. And I always love Carl Sagan's famous pale blue dot quote, where it's just looking at that little dot and all of human history has happened just right in that speck of dust. And that just like, there's a very humanizing aspect of going to space and realizing that, we're just so tiny, but we're doing these really cool things and we kind of need everyone to be involved. Uh, just the
Yeah.
sum of all that, I think, is really inspiring. And hopefully, those trends continue of a more inclusive space atmosphere. Still a long way to go. There's
Yes, definitely.
definitely not equal opportunity yet. There's definitely not totally accessible like communications and things like that. But I think we've made a lot of progress, and I think there's a lot more inspiring
Potential.
progress to come.
Yeah. And I completely agree with the point where you were saying how there's so much potential in the industry. There's so many things that we have to look forward to, and so many small steps we're taking. And if you look back from a century ago to now, we've definitely made huge progress. I'm sure we couldn't even have imagined, commercial travel back then. Something that we're actually excited about and thinking about now. And that actually brings me to my next question, which is kind of like a lot of people are against commercial travel, and a lot of people are also against the high budget that goes to all these space companies, like from the government to NASA. And they're kind of like always wondering, is space really going to help us? Or is it really worth spending that much money? Like, what's your take on that? I'm always curious to hear everyone's opinion on this situation. So, what's your thought kind of spending that budget on something more useful in Earth versus kind of outside of Earth? What are your thoughts?
Uh, I've had to answer this question a lot. I get it quite a bit. Why space? And I would say, first of all, the amount of money that the government actually is spending on NASA compared to like other programs is minuscule. They're big numbers, but it's just because all of these programs are big numbers. And I think it's also important. One thing that I never really fully thought about until I was working here is the planet that NASA studies the most is the Earth. Um, most of these satellites and are going up to send information back to Earth. We don't have too many things like Voyager out there exploring deep space.
Mhm.
Uh, we are studying things to help improve the Earth. You have Parker Solar Probe studying different mysteries about the sun, which is really important because we need to understand how it works if we want to send people to space. And also, you have things like space weather that can interfere with electric grids and communication satellites here on Earth. Where we just sent up the Michael Freilich Sentinel-6 satellite, which will be measuring sea level rise down to like, I think it's the centimeter. It's
Oh,
super
wow.
precise. It's either centimeter or millimeter, but it's extremely precise. Um, and you have things like Landsat, which is measuring like crop changes across the world. So we have all of these things that we're spending money on, but they're going back to help people on Earth. And I think people think too much about, going to the moon and going to the ISS and going to Mars, which are all really fun and cool things to think about, but that's not what all the money is being spent on.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's such a good point. I just realized, I never thought about this aspect until you mentioned it, but there was a satellite that I was I was introduced a few years ago where it circles around Earth and it tracks the climate change effect, like how it has on the decrease of icebergs and how our land is transforming over the years. And the maps that are created and analyzed by scientists is so cool to see how much like Earth has changed, obviously in a very negative way, but it also helps us understand where how Earth is being impacted the most. And I haven't, that's a new perspective I haven't thought about. A lot of the missions that NASA does is actually revolved around Earth, and that's a unique response. So I thank you for that.
Yeah. I think that's just trying to find the ways that we kind of benefit from it is always an important connection to make to
Yeah, and to
justify it.
kind of, yeah, for sure. I completely agree about that. And to kind of wrap up the interview, I kind of want to end with a question that I feel will wrap up the space, but also the journey and kind of relates to my whole interview series about what advice do you have for young STEM-based children or other students, just young people in general, regarding their pursuit of a passion in the space industry or the STEM field? What advice off of what you've done so far? I mean, you still have a long way to go, but from what you've learned, you could tell yourself 10, your mini self 10 years ago, what advice would you give to the kids out there?
I would say if you are passionate about it, you belong here. Um, I think a lot of people will be dissuaded thinking I'm not good enough, my grades aren't good enough, I'm not smart enough. But the reality is, like, you talk to some of these really smart people at NASA and they'll be like, oh yeah, I had failed this class, or I had, like, failed my first aerospace engineering final for sure. And failure is a part of the process. So as long as you're passionate and that passion is driving you, then you will find your place within the industry. And who knows, it might not be where you expect, but there is a place for you.
Yeah, I think the words failure is a part of the process is so key. And I think that's a great place to kind of wrap up the interview. I think it's important for everyone, including myself, to always remember that, like, no matter what the hurdles are, as long as I believe in myself and I believe my love for space industry, I can do it. And failures are only going to make me better and stronger. And, yeah, thank you so much for such strong words. And thank you so much for your time and providing so much insight to a lot of missions, websites, and fellowship opportunities that I wasn't aware of before. And I'm sure a lot of people aren't. So thank you so much for your time today. It was very informative.
Yeah, thank you so much for doing this. I think this is really important and really cool work that you're doing.
Thank you so much. Hopefully, we can talk again soon later.
Absolutely.
Okay, bye.
Bye.